Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Ryan Day, the Ohio State Buckeyes land what I think is a massive commitment in the transfer portal. Former Minnesota offensive tackle Phillip Daniels coming back home to the state of Ohio, committing to Ohio State. What I love about this commitment is really two things. One, Phillip Daniels, he's kind of a proven commodity in the Big Ten. As a redshirt freshman, took over the starting spot at right tackle for the last 4 games, played relatively good football. So this is a guy that can come in and probably give you a Big Ten level offensive tackle snaps immediately in 2025, but is also a green offensive tackle. I mean, he started the last 4 games as a redshirt freshman, is going to have 3 years of eligibility within Ohio State's program, kind of like Josh Simmons, who came in, got some development as well, and kind of morphed into one of the better offensive tackles that we saw in college football before the injury. I think you're hoping to get that same track record with a guy like Phillip Daniels. So again, you're getting a proven commodity, a guy that can come in right away and compete to start on this Ohio State offensive line in the 2025 year. But you're also getting a guy that has some upside and has some more development that he can tap into to really become a good football player for Ohio State on the offensive line. Get into Phillip Daniels a little bit more. I also want to have the conversation around Justin Fry and what's going on with this offensive line because, look, I've seen a lot of the frustration on the message boards and on Twitter from Ohio State fans, and it's hard not to agree with that. And you look at Justin Fry, it's really the one position that Ohio State hasn't crushed on the recruiting trail and certainly hasn't crushed in terms of development. And I will give Justin Fry some credit. I think he's done a good job with some of the injuries that they've had to endure on the offensive line. The offensive line didn't struggle as much as I might have thought it was going to in the back half of the season with some of those injuries. But at the end of the day, you're sitting here as an Ohio State fan looking at, hey, what parts of this roster do we need to address heading into 2025? The only position that I think is glaring for Ohio State is on the offensive line, specifically at the tackle position. And that's not a new conversation. We've seen Ohio State have to go to the portal to get offensive linemen in the past. Ohio State's going to use the transfer portal, but they want to use the transfer portal not out of necessity, but just to enhance the roster. Bringing a guy like Caleb Downs, who just makes your team better. You might have not needed a safety, but you got better when you added Caleb Downs. Adding a guy like Phillip Daniels, it feels like it's a necessity addition. And I think that's a result of just not good enough development on the offensive line and certainly not good enough recruiting the high school ranks. When you look at Ohio State and how they go about building this roster, it is you kind of get to pick your litter at a lot of different positions. The offensive line has been a spot where you kind of consistently missed out on some top targets on the recruiting trail, which results in really having to make up for that in the transfer portal. And I think we all know that's not the spot you want to be in, specifically at the offensive line position. That's a hard position to address every single year in the portal because there's not that many good offensive linemen that hit the portal, and everybody's looking for them. And so you got to make sure you're building this thing through the high school recruiting class, and it just seems like it's not good enough for Ohio State on the offensive line. And I would expect Ohio State to try to make some more additions to the offensive line because it is a glaring question mark heading into 2025. That's kind of my take on the Justin Fry offensive line situation. I would love to hear some Ohio State fans and their takes in the comment section. Now, before we get into some other targets, just want to say thank you to you guys. And, it's been a slow transfer portal window for Ohio State because they don't need to make a ton of additions. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll continue to break down the commitments as they come in. Let's get into Phillip Daniels. Again, where it starts for me is he's a really good athlete for someone who's 6'5", 315 pounds. Is there some development that needs to take place? Yes, absolutely. I felt like he played his best football game that last year of the season against Wisconsin, which is good to know that trajectory is going in the right direction. And anytime you get on the football field as a redshirt freshman at the offensive tackle spot, you're probably going to be special. That's one of those positions that's hard to play early. And a guy like Phillip Daniels playing early as a redshirt freshman, I think that's a good sign. I think the question mark is, all right, how good can we get this kid over the next couple of years? 3 years of eligibility is big. I mean, you have the opportunity to really sink your teeth in and develop this kid and really turn him into a really solid offensive tackle because I think he's got all the traits to be that kind of guy. I would expect Ohio State to continue to get aggressive on the offensive line. That's really that position you're looking at, especially with potentially going to Julian saying next year, a young quarterback. You want to make sure that offensive line is right heading into the 2024 year or 2025 year. The other position that I think Ohio State might want to address, and you've seen them try to address, and this is one that's pretty aggressive here, is Quentin Joyner, running back from USC. Travion Henderson going to the NFL. Quinshon Judkins, I think will go to the NFL. We'll kind of see what those running backs. It almost makes more sense maybe to stay one more year, but we'll see what Quinshon decides to do. I think regardless, though, Ohio State's probably looking to add a running back, and I think if Judkins does go to the NFL, I would guess Ohio State's going to try to land a guy like Quentin Joyner. They're also going after Justice Haynes, but Quentin Joyner seems to be the guy, and I think this one would make a ton of sense. Was a former top 100 national prospect in the state of Texas, went to USC. The production is not great because he didn't get a ton of opportunity, but you start looking at the numbers, had 64 carries for 465 yards, averaging 7.3 yards per touch. I've watched a lot of USC football. This kid can play. Didn't get on the football field as much as I think he would have liked, and I think that's why you see him in the portal. He was also playing behind a really good back in Woody Marks. I mean, 23 missed tackles forced on 64 carries. I mean, 14 of those carries went for 10 plus yards. What I like about Quentin Joyner, he's 5'11, 215, but he's also a sub 11-second guy in the 100-meter dash. Like, he has some juice when he gets into space. And so you're talking about a running back that can run behind his pads and kind of pick up some hard yards, but also a guy that can hit the home run as well at the running back position. This one I think Ohio State likes a lot. I think they're probably waiting to see what's going. I think Quentin Joyner probably more or less is waiting to see what's going on with Judkins before he decides to commit. This one I think would be a really good addition. We'll see where else Ohio State decides to go. You look at this roster and so you don't have a ton of concerns. That one concern is the offensive line. We'll see the extent Ohio State is able to address it in the portal. We'll cut it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.